Yes, this was a very conscious effort made by Anita Fairvang's father to make sure that Anita and her mother had a good look at the mess, that quite possibly they were responsible for, just, to again, a degree of payback here in the same vein as the rape ordeal, to suggest to you that they may well have been an effort here to gain some revenge or an act of retaliation in response to the treatment that he'd been given. As I said here in the last paragraph, as if he wanted them to see the mess, provide them with an image that will endure in their mind. And this, unfortunately, yes, as again, does suggest some very strong connections, between the death of her father and also this rape ordeal that I was told about. Told to me all in the same, as I say, the same vein of crocodile tears and attention seeking and sort of dodgy acting that was all part and parcel of the narration. And this second story, was even more suspicious, and went to something along the lines of, my best friend took me to the theatre to watch an opera, I think it was. Then we went back to my place. He was a lovely posh conservative guy, so I was very surprised when he held me down and savagely raped my anus. And at the time I was quite taken aback by this. It was like, oh, hold on a second, I've actually never heard a story like this in my life before. That was the first thing that went through my head. It was like, hang on a minute. It was like, run that by me again? I was, it's really one of the most extraordinary rape stories I've ever heard in my whole life to this day. I'm 52 years old at the time of making this video. And this, just on its own, again, rings alarm bells in my head. That such an acutely horrible rape ordeal should happen in the immediate aftermath of the death of her father. This again rings alarm bells, as I say, in my head, that there could well be a connection. And the fact also, it says here, and the police refused to arrest him. This makes me even more suspicious, actually, that even the Norwegian police at this stage, even, way back then when she was 14 years old, were already suspicious that Anita was busy honing her skills of terrorism and intimidation on her father, had gradually ground him down, that this played a very central role in forcing him to take his own life, and already the police were suspicious about her, and perhaps that's why they refused to actually even investigate this rape ordeal right from the outset. So these two stories, as I say, literally pointed to the fact that Anita Fevang is nothing more than a bad actor, or, maybe not quite what I would call a bad actor, but somewhere between good and bad, a practicing actor maybe would be a more accurate description. But she lies to herself, she lies to her husband, she lies to friends and family, she lies to police, as we've just seen. She lies in courtrooms. And is it really so surprising that there may be a link between Anita Fairvang's rape ordeal and her father's suicide after many years of relentless abuse? Or is it such an outrageous suggestion to make that there could be a connection between the abuse that she levelled at her father and the fact that she was practicing this arsenal of terrorist skills from a young age, which, as I say, would also explain why she became such a seasoned pro later on in life when it comes to methods of intimidation. Now, just briefly, I would also like to just look at the possibility or the fact here that the past 6 years of constant abuse levelled at both myself and my son by Anita Fevang amounts to nothing more than an extremely determined campaign of suicide and incitement upon us both. This is the issue I'm coming to here, is that Anita Fevang is, like I mentioned earlier, is just using crime to cover up crime, terrorism to cover up terrorism, and suicide incitement to cover up suicide incitement, raising the question, is Anita trying to advertise the fact she drove her father to take his own life? And of course the irony here is that in just intensifying her methods of suicide incitement and strategies of intimidation in order to try and cover up earlier campaigns of terror that she exercised on her father, only ironically appears to have made her or just blown her cover. So yes, in this attempt to hide it, she's only managed to expose the truth. And is she therefore trying to remind the world about what really did happen? Or is Anita frantically trying to force her son and myself to take her own lives because we have damning evidence she does not want us to disclose, which would obviously just be another bonus if one of us did. And she was successful in these efforts. She would obviously be opening a bottle of champagne, we presume, to know, that all this evidence has suddenly bitten the dust or hit the trash can. So yeah, that's a matter of great concern. And another thing that's worth taking into consideration is the fact that I've been complaining about this issue and these discoveries. This is particularly the link between the rape ordeal and the suicide of her father since 2014. And so far no one has been able to point to one piece of evidence to disprove it. Now this is in spite of a number of shocked looks, even looks of disgust, to remind me that this information has not been well received. But as I say, in spite of this, nobody in the past 6 years, since I've been ringing the alarm about this issue and spreading this information for as far and wide as possible, nobody has been able to literally produce one piece of evidence, be it large or small or even tiny, to disprove any of it. And to the contrary, time has only served to confirm that every last detail is perfectly true. And just to add to that, to the best of my knowledge, everything that I have expressed in this video is 100% correct to the best of my knowledge. And the life-changing mutilations to my mouth, teeth and face now define Anita Fevang as a lying, serial, daddy-slaying coward. And by simple definition, if we examine all of her stories and evidence, we can see she does not tell the truth. And very worryingly, she appears to pick on one father after the other. Now the strong suggestion here is of course that the rape ordeal did not put Anita Fevang in a good mood. I have a picture here, I believe, that I found on the internet, which does match exactly the story that Anita Fevang told me. It's only just literally matches the description of what she related to me. And the strong suggestion is here, of course, that the rapist was exacting some kind of revenge, and there was a degree of retaliation in this ordeal, to suggest that yes, he was giving her a short taste of her own medicine, that if she thought it was funny and amusing to grind her father down and abuse him until he put a hole through his chest, then the rapist is standing up to this thug and this bully to say, right, I'm going to put a hole through you in a slightly different part of your anatomy, but nevertheless, yes, a clear act of retaliation. So my arguing, the point being here, this clearly didn't put Anita Fevang in a very good mood, because she had embarked on this campaign of terror against men. And I think it's no surprise I'm a man, because she was looking, I believe, for somebody to vent her anger from, or upon rather, in light of these incidents, and in light of having to be exposed to this act of revenge. which I don't think she wholly expected. And as I say, as part of her retaliation, it has been to come to England and exercise this 17-year campaign of terror against me. Although she went back to Norway in 2008, she's still been. Hello there. I was just trying to point out that there's a very clear link, or unfortunate connection between the pent-up frustration and anger harboured by Anita Fevang in the wake of this rape ordeal and the sustained relentless campaign of terror that she embarked upon when she arrived in England against myself. In other words, to suggest that this rape ordeal and apparent retaliation for the treatment she gave her father created so much anger in her that she was desperately looking for a victim and an opportunity to vent this frustration upon a vulnerable target, of which I represented the perfect opportunity, I believe, being a vulnerable cancer patient struggling with a head injury in a foreign country. And I believe it's also no coincidence that she chose to embark on this campaign of terror, crime and abuse in a foreign country, quite simply because she was not known to the police here, and there was not the local people gossiping about her like there might have been in Norway that could warn others of her past, and meaning she basically had a clean sheet and free rein just to vent her frustration in a country where, as I say, she was not known to the police or anybody here at the time. So yes, a very clear indication that she was a man-hater, not just a man-hater, but a very furious man-hater who was willing to go to any extreme in order to vent her frustrations upon a vulnerable victim, of which I, of course, represented the perfect target. Now, this also reveals a very worrying pattern of abuse that Anita appears to have embarked upon from quite a young age, which is mutilating her victims with a view to grinding them down, corroding their morale, and forcing them to take their own life. This is reading from the middle paragraph here. The life-changing mutilations to my mouth, teeth and face now define Anita Fevang as a lying, serial daddy-killing coward. She literally mutilates and kills fathers one after the other, then uses extreme terrorism to hide the evidence. To suggest to you that, yes, very unfortunately, I have been left seriously mutilated in much the same way that her father was badly mutilated when he died. He was in exactly the same circumstances as myself, left with quite serious mutilations. I believe he was blind, or partially blind in one eye, had a number of other health challenges which were disturbing him at the time, and obviously that led very clearly to his decision to suicide himself, and raises the next question. Obviously, how many other people are going to fall victim of this abuse, which very clearly started with her father, and the mutilation of her father, forcing him to suicide himself, then on the next father, which was me, the father of her first child, and it clearly indicates there could be more in the pipeline. So is her partner Ronnie Johansson still alive? Has he been badly mutilated as well? Is my son still okay? I have not seen or heard from Benjamin since 2014, so how am I supposed to know he's alive? Which I presume is all again part and parcel of the plan to force me to suicide myself, to keep me out of the loop, keep me in the dark, make sure I have no news or information relating to my son's progress, well-being or health, which will hopefully have this slowly corrosive effect upon my morale, and on top of everything else, be the last straw that broke the camel's back and result in my taking my own life, which would be very convenient, of course, from Anita's point of view, in burying evidence and hiding all the truths that I have exposed. So, very briefly, I'd just like to bring up two pictures here. This is the one of Anita at the Crown Court in 2003, where she lied her head off to the judge, literally reeling off the most awful set of atrocious, blatant lies to the judge you can imagine, that were all believed on face value without a moment's hesitation, and very unfortunately nearly resulted in my going to jail after being attacked, with this by this mad monkey with a brick, only to be made to look like the offender and nearly end up in jail for, as I say, being attacked by this lunatic with a brick. Which was astonishing, and of course, raises other very serious questions. Well, how many other cancer patients and car accident victims are being dragged into courtrooms and stitched up just by, just vile, dishonest, lying, murdering terrorists such as Anita Fevang, who are obviously hell-bent on just reeling off, as many lies and forging their own dishonest narrative on top of everyone else's in order to just get the result they want. And she humiliated the justice system on that day more than they are aware, I think, or would believe, for that matter. And this also leads me to this rather sad photograph here, the last photograph taken with myself and my son. Of myself and my son in 2014, and incidentally this was the first time I'd seen him in 5 years, since 2009, when this photograph was taken. So only 20 minutes that I was allowed to see him, and that was for the first time in 5 years, which altogether makes 20 minutes in 11 years that I've been allowed to see my son in the past 11 years, which is not only criminal and just diabolical, it's also a very clear evidence, I believe, of further efforts to suicide us. Which brings me to the just final summary of the evidence that I have uncovered in this video, that the truths rather that Anita Fevang does not discuss, and the other half of the story. The strange circumstances of her father's death, specifically the 15-minute gap he left before Anita and her mother returned home. The equally strange circumstances of the rape ordeal happening so soon after her father's suicide, an apparent act of revenge. The angry rampage through the UK and venting of anger upon a vulnerable cancer patient with a head injury. The catalogue of crime, physical attacks, GBH and abuses that followed in the wake of this angry rampage. The conducting of strict operations of ruthless sustained suicide incitement to apparently hide evidence and silence victims, which all amounts to, I believe, very clear and conclusive evidence that there was foul play during the suicide of Anita Fevang's father, and also brings to my attention in no uncertain terms that I am very lucky to be alive, very lucky not to have been more seriously mutilated than I have been, although I still regard the mutilations I've suffered as quite severe and serious. I am aware that they could be even more serious, and I'm also aware of the fact that the intention that Anita had right from the get-go was that of murder, not just mutilation but also murder, to kill me. That has been the intention from the outset, and was made all the more clear by the fact that there was a brick murder attempt that triggered this whole sustained campaign of terror against me in the first place. So I am more lucky than you, or maybe even myself, realise, just to be sitting here narrating this news, because very clearly also, if Anita had not successfully managed to kill me, simply by the amount of abuse, that would have obviously caused the cancer to kill me, or another accident to kill me, or of course, the intention of suicide incitement. Then the last possibility was that I would be so badly damaged and mutilated that I would literally be unable to formulate a sentence. I'd be unable to talk coherently, and therefore unable to defend myself properly or make any video about the evidence that I had discovered. So that also very worryingly suggests that there are other people out there who have been victims of similar campaigns of abuse, who have been left so badly mutilated and damaged